All right, we are going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We are so glad that you are here. I would like to welcome back everyone who was here with us last week for part 1, but also welcome anyone new to part 2 this week. We're so glad that you all are here. As a reminder, since this is a webinar format, you're automatically muted with your camera off. So please go ahead and use the Q&A or the chat features for any questions and comments. We'll be monitoring those and we'll do our best to get them answered throughout the demonstration. In just a moment, I'll be adding some helpful information and resources to the chat box, so keep your eye on that. And just like last week, this will be recorded, and that recording will be sent out to you to reference later. It will also be up on our YouTube channel for you to continue to reference whenever you need it. I will go ahead and welcome Charlotte, who many of you will remember from last week. She's got an amazing setup for us tonight, so Charlotte, take it away.
Thanks, Dakota. Yeah, welcome back, and welcome to any new people that are showing up today. I'm excited to be teaching this virtual cooking class to start off our semester full of, we're doing all our cooking classes virtual this semester, which is a whole new world for us as COVID life is for all of us. So today we're going to be actually putting into practice the meal planning we talked about last week. So we're going to start making the base like chicken sheet pan meal. And then from there, we'll prep the egg muffins and get those ready to go once the other things come out of the oven. And then we'll make the 2 follow-up meals to the chicken sheet pan. So we'll show how to transform that into some tacos and some stir fry. As always, throw messages in the chat function in the Q&A box. Dakota's going to be monitoring them. I'm also going to be looking at them as much as I can, but Dakota's going to speak up if she sees anything come through. I love cooking and I get really excited. So if I start going a mile a minute, say something in the chat box, be like, whoa, take a step back. I need to catch up. I am more than happy to do that. Like I said, I get really excited about cooking. So I am prone to go a little quickly. So please let me know if I'm going a little too quickly. I do have a lot of things pre-prepped today. I got my staging area behind me. I'm gonna do my best to try and remember to not talk as I turn my back to you. But if you miss anything, also please throw a message in the chat function, say, hey, missed that, what did you say? And I'll repeat myself. I'm gonna try my hardest, but I may not always remember. The other things for all of you at home, we are going to be touching raw meat today. If you bought chicken or if you're using a different meat, if you're using tofu, it's not quite as much of a food safety concern. But if you are using raw meat, as we're putting that onto the pans, I've already put mine on so I don't have to turn my back to the video and wash my hands. But at home, please remember to wash your hands after you're touching that raw meat before you move on to the next task. Same with the eggs. When we're cracking the eggs and we're getting raw eggs on our fingers, we want to make sure we're washing our hands off with that as well. So I think those are, the other thing, knife safety. You're all at home. If you have been to our in-person cooking classes, it's more of a concern because we have 16 people crammed into a kitchen and we're all close together, which obviously is not the case today because you're all at home, but always good to remember knife safety, especially if you have kids at home that are running around or anything like that. So with the knife, I usually kind of will grasp the blade with my thumb and forefinger and my index finger, and then use that to grip. Some people like to put their index finger on top of the blade and use that to stabilize. Some people just like to hold the handle of the knife. Whatever makes you feel most comfortable with using the knife, use that method. Don't try something new and be like, well, she said to do this, but it doesn't feel right and I feel like I'm gonna cut myself. Don't listen to me. Make sure the knife feels stable in your hand. Just because I hold it this way does not mean you need to hold it that way. I also change my grip depending on what I'm cutting and the size of the knife. So just make sure it feels secure in your hand. That'll be the safest way for you to hold your knife. And as always, like, I'm home alone, don't worry. I'm not like risking cutting anyone. Don't like walk around with knives in your hands. Even like if I'm a hand talker, so I could easily risk cutting myself when I'm doing that. So make sure you put your knife down before you move around and do anything else. Okay, so that goes my food safety and like admin type things. So because my computer's a little further away, I do have this overhead camera. I can't necessarily read all the comments as well without leaning in. So I'll try and keep up with those as much as possible, but I know Dakota's gonna help funnel those my way. Okay, so let's get started. So first we're gonna get the potatoes in the oven because they'll take the longest to cook. So starting with this base sheet pan meal that's gonna be chicken, potatoes, and veggies. So when cutting a potato, you wanna make sure you wash it first. There's no magic trick to cutting a potato. For this meal, you do want them to cook fairly evenly, so you want them to be somewhat similar sized. You don't need to get a ruler and make sure they're all perfectly inch squares. But I usually just cut it down the middle. And then if you see any like brown spots like that, I'll usually cut those out and throw them away. I guess I will also preface this. If you take nothing away from this cooking video except for this, I always have like a waste bowl, a compost bowl, trash bowl, whatever you want to call it when I'm cooking, especially when I'm meal prepping or I'm cooking really big, like if I have people coming over or if I'm cooking a lot of something, I'll always have a bowl there so that I can funnel waste that way so the cooking area stays a little cleaner and we're not using space on our chopping board for food scraps. So it's like one of my number one food cooking tips and tricks. So from there, I'm chopping the potato. Like I said, there's no magic way to do it. You just want to make sure they're fairly even. So I'm going to cut it in quarters, and then I'll probably just cut this way. This will depend if your potato is a little flatter than it was tall. I kind of cut it a different way. But you just want to make sure they're somewhat even. And then the other knife safety piece of advice I will give everyone tonight is you want to use like this bear grip almost on whatever you're chopping, whether it's potatoes, onions, fruit, vegetables. So that way when you get close to your fingers, you're less at a risk of cutting them. If you're holding things like that with your fingers out, it can be pretty easy to chop, especially if we're not paying much attention or we're distracted or something distracts us outside of the kitchen. So always keep that like knuckles down on the piece of food you're chopping. So from there, just finish chopping these. Okay, so we have potatoes, pretty even sized, say, I don't know, I'm really bad at guessing measurements, inch and a half thick or wide. I did chop up another one. The recipe only calls for one, so if you only have one, totally fine. You listen to directions. I just had an extra one sitting in the kitchen, so I figured I would chop it up and prepare it today. Okay, so we got our potatoes. These ones are looking a little gross because I did cut them earlier and I did not account for them browning and sitting on the counter, so ignore my very brown looking potatoes. So from here, we're just going to drizzle some olive oil, not about a tablespoon. We are going to mix this so you don't need to do it super evenly over all of them. And then you're going to sprinkle a little bit of salt and some pepper. This, you don't want to go too heavy on the salt, just because we don't want to too much salt in our diet, but pepper to taste however much or however little you like. These potatoes are only really going to be used for this main sheet pan meal, so now would be a really great time if you want to add different flavorings to them, to add whatever you want. Rosemary, garlic powder, you could chop up some fresh garlic in here. I'm going to add some lemon pepper seasoning today, because I looked at my spice cabinet and it sounded good. Which I already added pepper, which can be extra peppery. Didn't really think about that. From there, you just want to kind of mix it all around. You can use fingers or tongs, whatever feels best to you. So just want to get that oil nice and dispersed, get the seasonings nice and dispersed so you don't have half the tray with really salty potatoes and the other half with really bland potatoes. And then once they're all nice and covered, you can spread them out nicely. You don't want them too close. If you have because you only chopped up one, you should be able to get them nice and even on your pan. And then from there, wipe the oil off my hands. And then we're gonna get those in the oven. So hopefully all of your ovens are at 400 degrees. If you are cooking along with me today, if you're just sitting and watching, that's okay too. But if you are cooking, let's get these in the oven. Any shelf, doesn't really matter. And then I'm gonna set a timer for about 15 minutes. Okay. So from there, we're gonna prep the veggie and chicken piece of this meal. These generally take a little less time to cook. Depending on how roasted you like your vegetables, you could also prep them and put them on the same pan as the potatoes and put them in. Totally your decision. Chicken breast will not take the full time, so you definitely want to make sure the chicken goes in afterwards. The chicken, depending on the size, will be about 20 to 30 minutes, probably more on the 20-minute side. So today, I'm going to be doing broccoli, peppers, and onions. I chose these three because I love broccoli. It's one of my favorite vegetables. I chose peppers and onions because part of these vegetables are going to go into the tacos, and I just think those two pair really well with tacos, but any vegetables will work here, so whatever you are using at home is perfect. So chopping broccoli, there's, again, a lot of things, there's no like magic way to do it. It's just whatever feels best to you or whatever you're used to doing. Don't do as I say, not what I do, right? With throwing knives around. With broccoli, I like to include the stem. It decreases food waste and it's edible. And I think it tastes really good, especially roasted. It softens up really nicely. You do want to cut about like an inch or so. It's like about an inch or so off the end because that bit isn't too fun. You do want to peel a little bit, especially closer towards the end. When you get closer to like this part of the stem, you don't necessarily need to peel. Even this part you can get away without peeling. It's just a little harder to chew even once it is cooked. So I usually won't do like a full peel. I'll just usually chop a little bit. Oh, sorry, the sun is coming in awkwardly through my window. There we go. Try to. So I don't do like make sure I peel every little part of the outside off, but I just make sure I get a little bit of the hardier off. And then from there, I just chop it into, as with anything, bite-sized pieces. And then we can throw it on our sheet pan. And then with the broccoli florets, let's say just chunks about that big. So I took this floret and cut it in half. And then we can throw that on. Smaller chunks you can leave whole. This one's really big. I'll probably chop the stem off and then chop this in half. Maybe cut that one a little smaller. But again, there's no magic way to chop broccoli. Whatever works for you. So I'm just going to quickly do the rest of this. I'm using a little more than 3 cups than the recipe calls for today, mainly because I have a lot of veggies I need to use up in the house today that were about to go bad, so I'm using them up. And this is part of meal prep. I'm already doing the work to teach this cooking class today, so why not already get the ball rolling on having food ready for the weekend. So I'll have pre-roasted veggies in the fridge. Okay, so from there I'm gonna cut this pepper. For roasting, I'm just gonna do slices. So I already sliced up a green pepper I had in the fridge. I think you can do chunks, you can do slices, whatever works for you. When I'm cutting peppers, I usually cut one side off, and then you can see the inside where like the white pith is. And so from there, I usually just chop down the other side and then continue going around until we have just the core. And then from there, I'll usually chop off the end. So that's a nice bit of pepper flesh. And then depending on the pepper, depending on how much is left up here, sometimes I'll chop off the top bits as well. Depending on how you're cutting it, or depending on the pepper, you may not have as much up there. So don't feel like that's a required step. And then we have this nice core. It helps keep seeds keeps from getting seeds everywhere. So I really like that method. And from there, for slices, we've got nice big pieces that we can just quickly cut into slices. And I like this method because it doesn't require any like tricky trying to get all the seeds and all the white pith out. Okay, so now we got our peppers. So when we're picking vegetables that we want to use, especially in recipes like this where it's a little less structured of you need this specific vegetable, I always do what works for you and do what you like based on your preferences. But I always aim for a couple different colors. Different colors in fruits and vegetables generally indicate different micronutrients, so different vitamins and minerals. So red and orange vegetables tend to be higher in vitamin A. Green vegetables are often higher in vitamin E, things like that. So you do want a variety of color, as well as it's important to get vegetables in, but it's also important to get different colors in. So I got red, green, and we're about to have some purple with my onion for today. Okay, so onion tricks. We have the root end and then the stem end. I always start by cutting the stem end off so we have a nice flat surface. With really round vegetables, or when you're cutting a big melon, anything like that that's a little wobbly, sometimes a really good first step is creating this flat surface so that it sits nicely on the chopping board and won't slip around when you're trying to cut it. So from here, I'm just gonna cut it in half. So we have 2 equal halves. And then from here, I'm still keeping the root intact. I'm just gonna peel off those couple layers of the tough skin that you don't wanna eat, that doesn't cook well or anything. So we're gonna peel that off. And to match the peppers, I'm gonna do slices today. I will show you with the other half a quick dicing technique as well. But for the peppers to go with my pepper onion fajita veggie mix, I'm just gonna do some quick slices. These are gonna be in the oven for about 20 minutes. So I'm gonna do it on the slightly thinner side, just because I like onions to cook a little more. I don't want raw onions. And then from there we have the rest of the root. We could throw that in your waste bin, or your waste bowl. Okay, so I'm gonna spread those out. Eyes are watering. If anyone needs a onion crying break, let me know. I'll deal with that. Okay, so then I'll quickly show you a dicing trick with this other half, because I think I have plenty of vegetables already for the recipes today. And I have not found the magical cure to crying when chopping onions, so if anyone has any suggestions for me, please throw those in the chat box. I have tried all the options, and I don't know if it's just me, but none of them seem to work. Okay, so once we have this peeled, we got the root end still intact. So from here, I usually will have a really good grip on it and then take my knife. If you're a little newer to cutting vegetables, you may want to start with a smaller knife. Having a big knife like this can be kind of scary. But you want to dig in and cut down to the board, but you don't want to cut towards the roots. You want to make sure you leave the root intact. And if you see the lines on onions, you kind of want to follow those trajectories. Let's see, I wear a surgical mask and glasses. Yeah, I should probably start doing that. It's the protecting the eyes. I feel like that's it's the biggest. And we all have masks now, so I already got one of those in my house. Okay, So once you have all of your lines this way, and with this method, you can go as thin or as thick as you want, depending on the dice you need. If you want a really fine dice, you can create more lines. If you want a thicker dice, you can create less lines. So from here, you'll see a lot of different techniques. A lot of people will also cut this way. I'll generally only do that when I need a super fine dice for anything, or I want it really finely chopped. If I'm just throwing it into stir fries, or I'm throwing it into scrambled eggs or omelets or whatever I'm cooking, I generally don't mind about the less precision. So I won't go through the hassle of cutting it this way. If you want to, go for it. But again, if you're following along, this isn't a necessary step. I'm just doing a little side tutorial while the potatoes are finishing up. So after you have your lines that way, you want to turn the onion, get your bear grip going, and chop, someone remind me of my geometry, perpendicular to the lines you just cut. And sometimes you'll get these like funky bits that won't cut. You can just turn the onion over and cut those off. And you want to be careful once you get closer to the root and getting closer to your fingers, and make sure you're really paying attention and not risking cutting yourself. And so from there, we got a pretty good dice on our onions with minimal effort and only small amount of tears on my side. Like I said, it's not the most precise, especially without doing that horizontal cut, but unless you're a professional chef or in culinary school, if you're just cooking at home, my taste buds don't mind the lack of precision, so it's up to you on how precise you want to be. Okay, I'm gonna grab a bowl for these real quick. Okay. Another useful tip when you're sliding things into something, if you're ever doing something like this I'm doing right now, you always want to use the back end of your knife. So you don't want to scrape with the sharp knife. It can make your blades go dull a little quicker. And so you want to scrape with the back edge, the non-sharp edge of your knife. Okay, so you're gonna wanna get your chicken out, or whatever protein you're using. And so now we have this lovely sheet pan of chicken and veggies, and the potatoes are in the oven. Okay, so from here, we're gonna wanna sprinkle the rest of the tablespoon of oil. So try and do, say, most of it on the veggies, and maybe just a little bit on the chicken breasts. And then again, a little bit of salt. And some pepper. Do this to your taste preference. We're gonna be using these veggies for both the tacos and this base sheet pan meal. So I would say try to not add seasonings unless it's a seasoning that you're happy with putting in tacos, putting in your sheet pan meal on your plate. So if you wanna spice them in a way that goes with all the meals involved, go for it. But you can always just do a base salt and pepper and add seasonings later. Then with your chicken as well, you want to do a little bit of salt and pepper on the chicken. The chicken will release juices when it cooks. That's why I'm not as concerned about getting oil on the chicken. And I'm going to use some tongs to flip my chicken over so that I don't have to turn my back and wash my hands. Remember, if you are touching your chicken, please wash your hands. Okay, so I'm just going to add a little bit more salt. Let's say I probably did 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon for this whole sheet pan. So you don't need much. You can always add salt later if you need it. And so one of these chicken breasts is going to be for this base meal. So because I added lemon pepper seasoning to my potatoes, I'm going to add it to the chicken breast for that meal and then leave the other two plain. because those are going to be flavored with taco seasoning for the tacos, and they're also going to be flavored with some soy sauce, garlic, and ginger for the stir fry. So you don't want to get too many seasonings. And I'm double peppering again. That's very peppery food today for me. Again, you can leave it plain. You can add a sauce afterwards if just salt and pepper chicken doesn't sound as appealing to you. And then these touch raw meats, I'm going to throw them in the sink. Oh man, look at that perfect timing. So that's a potato timer. So I put them in for about 15 minutes ahead of time so they can start to cook. And then now we're going to throw in our chicken and our veggies. Before you do so, mix up your veggies so they're evenly oiled, salt, and pepper. Okay, perfect. Okay, so let's throw those in the oven. And now, if you want to do it, would be a really great time to flip over your potatoes. So I'm going to pull them out. See, I don't want to put it on top of my chopping board because that's how chopping boards melt. Do not do this one with your hands, in case anyone needs that reminder. So just mix them around so that they're cooking evenly on all sides, and then spread them back out. You don't have to do this step. They will still cook very evenly without. Sometimes it can just be helpful to mix them around a little bit. We can throw those back in. Okay, so I'm going to find my phone and set the timer for about 20 minutes. If you have a meat thermometer, that can be your timer. So whenever the meat is done, it'll be chicken you need to cook to about 165, you need to cook it to 165 degrees. So you can use that as your timer. 20 minutes should be a pretty good estimate no matter the size of the chicken breast. If it's a really thick chicken breast or a really thick cut of something else, a different protein, you may need to cook it for a little longer. If you're using tofu, if you're vegetarian or vegan, you may or may not need to cook it for that long, but it's not gonna hurt it to cook it for 20 minutes. I think that would probably still be a really good timeline. Okay, I'm gonna pause to get a sip of water. Please throw any questions in the chat box. Use this time, we're gonna switch to the egg muffins. If you need to rearrange your kitchen and get some new ingredients out, please do so now as I grab some water and get my egg muffin ingredients out. Okay. So, I think I'm done with chopping. Okay, I'm gonna switch to my muffin tin. And eggs, cheese. I'm gonna grab milk out of the fridge. Okay, so this is a really awesome recipe for breakfast meal prep. I think breakfast meal prep is one of the hardest ones to think of ideas. So this is a really awesome idea. You can customize them, any vegetables you want, any cheese you want. You could skip all of that and just make them plain eggs if you don't like toppings. And then once they're cooked, they're really awesome. You can store them in the fridge, you can store them in the freezer. Fridge, they last probably 3 to 4 days. In the freezer, they'll last a few months. And once you're ready to eat them, if you have English muffins at home, you can throw, one in the microwave, put it between an English muffin, and you have a breakfast sandwich. You can grab a couple on the go with some fruit, anything. You can just grab a couple, put a piece of toast on the side, maybe a small bowl of oatmeal, and these for some protein. However you want to make your breakfast. They are pretty low in carbohydrates. So for your breakfast meal, you do want to balance a protein source and a carbohydrate source for the most part. So you do want to pair these with some form of carbohydrate, whether that's some oats, some toast, an English muffin. You could chop them up and throw them in a tortilla, make a breakfast burrito sort of thing, grab some fruit, whatever works for you in the morning. But these are really great for grab and go. They're also really great. You could make them in bulk and throw them in the freezer if you know breakfast is a challenge of yours and you're always rushing to get to work or get the kids to school or whatever your morning routine looks like. Okay, so let's get cooking. So I'm going to start by measuring the cup of milk. So I'm not making more dishes because we need to measure it, and then we'll add the eggs to it. So with liquids, hold on. I don't want the dairy sitting on the counter for too long.
Hey, Charlotte, we have a quick question about any substitutes instead of eggs, if you have recommendations.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So there's actually a new vegan product out there that it's like liquid eggs, as if you had mixed up a bunch of eggs. So I would say for the closest comparison, you could try that. Outside of that, to get this same structure, it's gonna be a little difficult to find a direct comparison. So I would say, I think it's called Just Egg or something like, it comes in a squeeze bottle, like a mustard, and it's in the egg aisle. I've seen it, it's a more recent product. So you can definitely do that. That would be the closest comparison. Other than that, you could try it with tofu. You would want another, what's the word I'm looking for? Something to keep it together. But you could potentially do that. I've never tried it, so I don't have a super great answer for that question. Without turning it into a sweet muffin or savory muffin or something like that. But I would check out that vegan egg replacement because it does act like liquid mixed eggs and see if that works. I've never tried it. It's definitely a much more recent product on the market. So I've only just seen it in stores. You could try that. That would be the only one to get the same consistency. Other than that, it would probably take some trial and error, and I haven't done that, so I don't have a super great answer for that, unfortunately. Okay. If you have any follow-up questions for that, Carrie, let me know. I'll throw those in the chat box. Okay, so this recipe calls for 6 eggs. What was I saying before? Oh, liquid measuring. That's what I was going before. So when you measure liquids, you definitely want to use these jugs instead of measuring cups like this. Measuring cups are designed for dry ingredients, and then these are designed for wet ingredients. So it's not going to make or break a recipe if you use one of these, especially a recipe like this. Baking may be a little different of a story. Baking is less of an art and more of a science, whereas cooking I like to call more of an art and less of a science. So we're going to crack our eggs. I always crack my eggs on a flat surface. It can help if you don't overcrack them. It can help decrease the risk of getting shells in there. So I usually just do one really good hit and then push the little dent in with my finger to crack the egg. So we'll crack all those in. And again, you can batch cook these if you need lots of breakfast in the freezer ready to go, or you live with a lot of people, you have a lot of kids to feed, you got a hungry husband, a hungry wife, whoever is at home with you, whoever you're cooking for, or you just need a lot of breakfast for yourself. Whatever you need, you can make this, you could half this and do 6, you can double it and make 24. Whatever your breakfast meal planning needs are. So once you have eggs and milk in there, you just want to whisk it together. I usually just use a fork. You can use a whisk. I all my whisks are really big, and I find for things like this, it just doesn't do as good of a job. I usually tilt it a little bit and just put my fork in circular motion till it looks kind of all homogeneous. And then we're gonna add a 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper. I'm just gonna eyeball it because I don't wanna crack a bunch of pepper into a tiny little 1/4 teaspoon. This doesn't call for salt because we're adding cheese to this, and cheese is fairly salty already. So if you are omitting cheese, I would add about a 1/4 teaspoon or 1/2 teaspoon of salt as well. You can also add the cheese in here, which is what I'm gonna do today, or you can pour everything in and add the cheese on top of the actual egg muffins. Whichever works, they both are great options. If you're using more of like a soft cheese, like a goat cheese, I would say definitely add that afterwards so you can add little clumps in. It may not mix as well into this egg milk mixture. And so with the cheese and the pepper, you just want to give that a really good stir. A really good stir because I see a couple yolk chunks. So eggs are a really great breakfast option if you do eat animal products. There's a lot of dislike of eggs as whole eggs, and a lot of people use egg whites. The egg yolks have a lot of really good nutrients, so I'd say if you're open to the idea, try the full egg instead of just egg whites. Okay, so from there, we're gonna grease your pan first. You can either get like a paper towel with some oil and wipe it in all of the containers. If you have any of the spray oil, that's what I did before class today. Just give it a quick spray so the egg muffins come out more easily. You can also use muffin tin liners if you want. That's totally up to you. I'm just gonna spray it. This muffin tin is fairly new, so it's still got that really nice nonstick sheen to it, so it doesn't usually need a lot of oil. I chopped up some peppers and onions. I'm all out of sorts today. Mushrooms and tomatoes for today. You can use whatever veggies you want. This is about 2 cups. So you just wanna fill them up. You could do chopped up spinach, you could do broccoli, peppers, onions. Like I said, you can do no veggies if you just wanna do just the eggs and the cheese. Adding veggies is a really great way to get some extra in throughout the day. If you struggle to find ways to add more veggies into your life, this is a really great, easy way to get some in the morning and add some fiber to this meal. I just want to roughly evenly. So like I said, this was about 2 cups, so it works out pretty perfectly. You can also do like 3 different ones if you want to be adventurous. You don't need to do all the same for each cup. That's what I'm doing today, just for ease. If you're meal prepping a bunch, I would say the simpler, the better. It's going to be more efficient and more easier, and you're not going to need to buy a whole bunch of vegetables. You can also use frozen vegetables here. You can pre-cook these if you want. I'm choosing not to, just because onions and mushrooms and tomatoes don't need a lot of cooking. I like tomatoes raw. Mushrooms I like in all forms and shapes and sizes. So I'm not pre-cooking them. You can, especially if you're using like a heartier vegetable like broccoli, you may wanna cook that ahead of time. But like spinach, tomatoes, mushrooms, don't necessarily need to. You can if you want to. Onions, depending on how raw you like your onions, you could probably cook those and would be beneficial. Okay, so from there, we're just gonna pour the egg in. I'm gonna give it one more good stir to mix up that cheese so we don't get cheese in our last half and none in our first half. If you mixed all of this in a bowl, you can get like a measuring cup and use that to pour it in. If you have a ladle, you can do that. If you did it in a measuring jug like I did, it's already got the nice pour spout. So that's a really great way to do that. And so from here, if you are a very precise person and you like measuring, you can use a measuring cup and then you know you have the exact amount in every single one. I am not going to do that today. I am not a recipe follower. If you can't tell, I don't follow directions while I'm cooking. But I know that stresses a lot of people out. And I did not do this evenly. See? Yeah, we got some really cheesy lost ones and some really non-eggy lost ones. Okay, so from here, I am gonna fix my mistake a little bit. I'm gonna grab some egg out of this one because this one's really full. Like I said, cooking is an art, not a science. Maybe I'll get better results if I treated it like a science. But I think it'll all taste great no matter what, so I'm not too worried. I'm going to redistribute some of this cheese because this one has 0 cheese. This is where adding the cheese afterwards can be helpful, just because we don't get what happened to me and we get a bunch of cheese. Like we got a bunch of cheese in these 6 because they were the last ones and not a lot in these. So again, if you like to be more precise, be as precise as you need. If you're like me and I'm just going to do my own thing, I go rogue when I cook, you can do what I do. So we have those all ready. The everything in the oven still needs, let's check the timer. Still needs about 5 minutes. So I'm going to set these aside and we can move on to something else. Okay. So next up, we're going to make the sauce for the tacos. So we're going to make the avocado crema. So I should also pause. Your dog is too cute. Thank you. I do have, I don't know, I have one big dog whose nose is counter height, so you may see him wander in and out. It's also 7 p.m. is their, I'm going to spell it because they know the phrase DINNER time, and so they may start to get a little nosy towards the end of this class. Okay, so to make this avocado crema, I'm going to grab the ingredients, and I do need my chopping board, so I'm going to grab that back. Okay. So to make this crema, we're going to need avocado, lime, Greek yogurt, cilantro, and garlic. I noticed a typo in the recipe, so I do apologize. I switched this recipe from using garlic powder to using fresh garlic, and so the instructions still say to add the garlic powder. So when it says that, add fresh garlic. If you don't have fresh garlic, you can definitely sub for garlic powder. Let's say probably half to a full teaspoon. And if you're using fresh garlic, it calls for a clove. When I tested that, that was pretty perfect. I'm going to use a small clove today. Last time I used a really big clove and it was fairly garlicky. So judge clove size based on your garlic preference. Because it is raw, it'll be a little stronger, so be a little careful of that as well. Okay, so I'm going to start by peeling the garlic. I found this new trick that I love. There are 10 million tricks on how to peel garlic online. So if you have one that works for you and you love it, don't do what I say just for the sake of it. But I found this new trick where if you hold, kind of how like garlic curves usually, this one's like a better example of one with a curve that like it has that curve. So you want to push together the top of the garlic and like the root stem end and push it together. And I don't know how well you can see that, but it cracks the peel so that it makes it pretty easy to de-skin it. But again, I probably change my garlic peeling methods on a 6-month basis based on the new videos that pop on my Facebook or new tips and tricks people share with me. So like I said, if you have some awesome trick that you use and it's super efficient and it's awesome, don't switch it up, keep doing you. But if you want to try a new one, this has been my latest garlic chopping or garlic peeling trick. So from there, you just want to chop off the end. And you can throw it in whole if you want. If you're mixing this by hand, you definitely want to chop it up. You can chop it up by hand, or you can use a garlic crest, whatever you have on hand. I'm just gonna throw mine in whole. That seemed to work last time I made this, and it blended it up nicely. And I am using this blender today. It's a super little mini one. It's super fun, I love it. It's part of an immersion blender set. So this base is for an immersion blender, and then it came with all of these fun additions. I got it when I was in college and lived in a tiny dorm and didn't have kitchens or space for blenders and all of that fun stuff. So it's like this awesome little mini little blender, which I find is really awesome for things like this, or for homemade pesto, any kind of small amount of sauces that you don't want to get the big blender out. Like I said, I've had this since college, and it has been a very trusty kitchen appliance. Okay, from there, we're gonna add in 1/4 cup of Greek yogurt. I'm gonna get a clean spatula. So you wanna pour that in. Again, this is, other than chopping the garlic, this is a very easy one to do by hand if you don't have a blender, or you don't wanna get the whole blender out for this tiny little sauce. Or if you're cooking for more people or doubling it, get the blender out and do it with the full avocado, 2 avocados, whatever your needs are. So get the Greek yogurt in there. And cilantro, again, if you're doing this by hand, you're gonna wanna chop this. If you're not, like me, if you're doing it in a blender of any sort, you can just grab a bunch. It calls for a tablespoon. That's about a tablespoon. If you wanna measure it, please go for it. I love cilantro, so I'm probably gonna put a little extra in. You can also do it without the cilantro. If you're one of those people that cilantro tastes like soap to, please leave out the cilantro. It is not a necessary ingredient. I've also tested this with ground coriander, because that's the ground seeds of the cilantro plant, and it still tastes pretty good. So if you don't have fresh cilantro but have ground coriander in your cupboard, you can also use that. Yeah, the mashing garlic with the knife, that's also a really great trick. Okay, so that was the timer for the chicken. So I'm gonna quickly check that. Like I said, if you have a meat thermometer, you can use that. I do. I mainly use it for chicken because that's one of the only ones that needs to be cooked fully to help decrease your risk for foodborne illnesses. Like steaks, you can have medium rare. Pork, it's a little less strict than it used to be. So chicken is one of the few that I definitely always temperature check. Let's see that. Okay. Be careful with the hot pan. Use more utensils. Okay, so when you temperature check meat, I always try, this is the worst set of times ever. I always try and pick the biggest one and the biggest piece of that. And then you wanna insert close to the middle so that it's not, the outside is gonna be way hotter than the inside. So you wanna make sure it gets all the way in. And then this one's climbing, so it's at it's about 160. Okay, so I'm gonna throw it back in the oven for just a few minutes until I've got this avocado crema going, and that'll probably be pretty perfect. So if yours is already done, you can take it out. You can also slice it in half if you don't have a meat thermometer and check that it's white all the way through. Some ovens run hotter or colder than others, just naturally. So kind of if you know your oven well and you know that it runs hot, yours is probably already good. If it runs cold, you may need a little longer than I'm putting mine back in for. That's why I love a meat thermometer, so you can always be sure and you never have to guess whether the meat is done or not, especially if you like to give your meat a rest, you can still rest it and not have to cut into it. Okay, so I'm gonna quickly throw all these ingredients in. So we're gonna half the avocado, because we're only using half. And so you just wanna get the knife in and then cut all the way around. and then open it up. I'm gonna leave the seed in this one just because I wanna keep it, and that helps keep it fresher for longer. When you are de-seeding avocados, I have moved away from the knife method because I saw too many horror stories of chopped hands, and that terrified me. So if you actually take a spoon, and this one's really ripe, so the seed is already loose. But if you like put pressure on the base of the seed right here, right where, you can't really see that, but there's usually like a lighter circular patch at the base. So if you put a seed in or put the spoon in, and you can usually just flip it out. This one's already loose because it's super ripe. The riper it is, the easier it is going to be able to get the seed out. But you can sometimes also just use your thumb and push it out if it is ripe enough. But I've turned to that as a safer method without having to put the knife into the seed and risk chopping through, because I saw one video and it terrified me enough. But if you have had success with that, stick with it. Just please be really careful. So I'm going to set that aside, and I'm going to put the half an avocado in. And if anyone is like noticing in my giant pile of utensils and I keep going back to them and using them, I'm really careful when I cook. If I have touched raw meat with any utensils, they go straight into the sink for me, so that I know any utensils sitting on my counter have only touched vegetables, cooked meat, fruit, anything like that. So don't worry, none of these are raw meat, chicken utensils. Okay, so let's quickly squeeze the lime in, and then we'll check on our chicken again. So when we're squeezing citrus, I always like to roll it on the counter. It helps get a little more juice out when you go to squeeze it. And you can't tell, but it is much squishier than it was when I started. So that's a really nice method. I'm gonna use a citrus juicer today. If you don't have one, you can just chop it in half and squeeze it in by hand. Totally works. I've also seen people cut it in half, put the lime half in between tongs, and use that as a pressure system to get more juice out. When using citrus juices, I have generally found that this helps. I don't know where I got this information, so I don't know how, like, culinary school would probably not agree with this, but this is what I do, and it seems to work really well. So with a lime or a lemon or an orange, if you're juicing an orange, I like to cut this end bit off. So we're only using half a lime today. So I cut the end off so that it's open, and it was like a super small amount, if you can see that. And then chop it in half. And from there, I put it like the wider side down. And then I use that to juice it. I've noticed it helps get more juice out, but again, I don't know where I got that information or how accurate it is. That's just what I do. So sometimes I'll flip it over and squeeze again just to get all the juice out. But again, if you're squeezing by hand, go for it. Squeeze by hand. Also works. Okay, so from there, very limey hands. I'm gonna blend this up really quick, and then I'm gonna check on my chicken. So this will be a really great time for you to check on your chicken, put your blender on. I'm not gonna be saying anything useful for the next minute or so you don't need to worry about sound. So let's all make our kitchens noisy. Okay, so hopefully everyone's blenders are off and you can hear me again. So this is what it looks like. It's a nice crema. It's kind of thick. If you like it thinner, you could add more lime juice or more yogurt. That'll thin it out a little bit. If you like it more chunky, you could add more avocado. Again, I am not a rule follower with recipes. Adjust these as needed to fit your preferences, your texture preferences, your taste preferences, whatever you need. Again, if you're one of those people that hate cilantro, take the cilantro out and do it without. It'll taste just as great. it'll taste better because you don't like cilantro. So you just want to make sure that the garlic got mixed in and that the avocado is smooth and the cilantro got chopped up. But other than that, it is good to go. So I'm going to check on the chicken and re-temp it. I'm going to set that aside until we're ready for it. I'm also going to move this. Okay, and I apologize, my dogs are going to start barking, someone's just got Okay, perfect. That is at 165. So I'm going to take those out of the oven. If you're making egg muffins along with me, you're going to want to turn your oven down to 350, and we'll get those in. And you also want to take your potatoes out. So your potatoes hopefully look nice and brown and crispy like these do. If they don't, you can leave them in the oven as we're turning it down and putting the egg muffins in. And for that matter, if your chicken or your veggies aren't done, still turn the oven down, but leave them in as we're cooking the egg muffins. Those will take about 20 minutes, so we got some time for things to still cook if anything needs to cook. So I'm gonna play some Tetris with my kitchen real quick and get everything situated. So get everything situated for you as well. Okay, I'm gonna turn the oven down, and then I'm gonna get some, if you have hot pans, make sure to put something down on your counters instead of just putting them right. Okay, so you don't need to wait for your oven to fully cool down to 350. You can just throw your egg muffins right in. It'll cool down very quickly. Okay, so those need about 20 minutes. So I'm gonna set another timer. Okay. Then we are gonna get everything else ready. We're gonna start with the stir fry and get that going. And then we'll finish up with putting the taco seasoning on the chicken and getting the tacos ready. But for the most part, we are almost ready to eat. Okay, so I'm gonna start with the stir fry. Okay, so I'm gonna get my veggies, my pre-cooked rice, and my low sodium soy sauce. Okay, and there was also a typo in this. I will fix these typos and send them out to Dakota, and she will redo this. This is like my worst nightmare reading through all of this. It's already gone out to everyone, so I apologize for that. Okay, so for this, I used my spoon. Let me get a new spoon. Okay, so we're gonna make garlic and ginger for this recipe. So I got some ginger, and I store ginger in the freezer. It lasts a really long time in the freezer and helps keep it really fresh. And then when you're ready to use it, you can just break off a chunk that you need to use. And my favorite ginger peeling technique is with a spoon, which is why I went to go grab one. So mine's been sitting out a little bit. This works better when it's fresh out of the freezer. But you can use the spoon, and it peels ginger pretty effectively. Actually, this is working better than when it's frozen, if I'm gonna be honest. So maybe let your ginger sit on your counter, however much you need, for 20, 30 minutes before you peel it. Yeah, and then we have peeled ginger. Need about a tablespoon, which I'm gonna guesstimate that that's about a tablespoon. And then garlic, it also calls for tablespoons. I'm gonna use 2 cloves. So someone mentioned they use the knife smash technique with garlic, so I'll show that one. So that you put the garlic on the chopping board, put your knife flat on top of the garlic, and then push down with your hand, and it also breaks the peel so that it's easier to get off. Like I said, if you have a trusty, tried and true method, stick with that. If you want a new technique, try any of those. And this one, I'll go back to my newest technique. I've seen videos where people will put a whole bunch of garlic cloves in like a mason jar or a glass Tupperware or something and shake it all about. That can be really helpful. Like I said, do what this one, stop doing. Or you can do a combination of both if it's not working. You can also, if you are like, garlic peeling is my worst nightmare, you can buy pre-chopped garlic at the store in jars. Some stores will buy pre-peeled garlic. If that's gonna help you get garlic in your dishes quicker, by all means go for it if it's within your budget. I don't, because it doesn't last as long, it goes off quicker, but if you use a bunch of garlic and you can get through those big containers of peeled garlic, go for it. I generally don't, so I generally end up throwing a lot away, and I don't like doing that, so I buy whole garlic. Okay, I'm gonna use a garlic press today. If you don't have one of these, this is one of my favorite kitchen prep utensils. So you can throw, if it's a really big clove, let's say just throw them in one at a time. If they're kind of smaller cloves like mine are, you can sometimes get away with putting 2 in at once. So from there, I'm gonna just push it through. If you have 2 cloves in there, sometimes you need a little more oomph. And then, so you'll have nice minced garlic ready to go. You can also, if you don't have one of these, you can chop it by hand. I would say just dice it. I usually slice it and then chop it the other way, like I showed with the onion. It's just kind of a little trickier because they're really small. That's what I'm about to do with ginger, because ginger does not go through the garlic press, and I have tried, in case anyone was curious. So with ginger, you can also microplane ginger. So if you have a microplane, you can grate it to get it really nice and fine. I'm just gonna chop it by hand today because I surprisingly don't own a microplane. Put it on my Christmas list this year. So I sliced it up like that way, and then I'm gonna do 1 slice this way, and then just chop. And again, with that bare claw, so we don't risk chopping our fingers. When it gets close to the end, I'll usually take my fingers away just to really decrease that risk. And then I usually just like randomly throw the knife through it a little bit just to get it a lot finer. Big chunks of ginger aren't super fun to find in your stir fry. Okay, so from there, we got everything we need ready to go. I'm gonna preheat my pan. Stove doesn't work on that side, so I have to use a gas lighter. Okay. So I personally know this pan takes a really long time to heat up, so I'm gonna put it on high to heat up. If your pan is normal and heats up at a normal rate, you can heat it on medium, high to high, whatever works for you. You are gonna wanna put some olive oil in there. So you want about a tablespoon of oil. And today I pre-chopped some veggies. Stir fry, you can use frozen veggies, fresh veggies. If you wanted to cook extra veggies with the sheet pan meal and throw those in here, that totally works. Whatever you got in your fridge that you need to use up, that works. That's what I did today. I had 1 random carrot. I had like a mini bag of like a handful of snap peas left in the fridge, and I had some mushrooms left over from the egg muffin cups. So that's what I used today. I just put a bunch of them in there. Oftentimes the stir fries, I'll use frozen vegetables because they're already chopped, they're ready to go. You can throw them in the pan. Sometimes I'll defrost them for like a minute or 2 in the microwave before I throw them in the pan. Sometimes I won't, they'll just take a little longer to cook and defrost. So that's totally up to you, but frozen veggies can work really well for this. Then I have some pre-cooked brown rice. I cooked this in a rice cooker earlier today. You can cook it on the stovetop. Brown rice is usually 1 part rice to 3 parts water when you're cooking it on the stove. You can also use, they make those pouches of like microwave rice. You could use those too if you want to save time, and just throw that right into the pan as if you would cooked brown rice ready to go. So once your oil is nice and hot, turn down your heat a little bit. So I'm going to turn mine down to about medium high. If your pan heats up a little quicker or stays really hot, you may want to turn it down to medium. And then we're going to put in the garlic and the ginger. So both of these will cook really quickly. Garlic burns really easily. So we just want to cook these for about 30 seconds to a minute. Let me stop that a little bit. Okay. So your kitchen should be smelling really nice right about now. If you are a fan of spice, this would be a really great time to add some chopped chilies in as well. If you like spice, or you can add like those crushed dried red pepper flakes, that would be a really awesome addition here. So like I said, garlic burns really quickly, so you just really want to get this to be aromatic so when you can smell it. So about 30 seconds is all you need, and then throw in your veggies. And mix that all up. You can also do the pan shake method. Whatever works best for you. Okay, so I'm actually going to light my back burner and move this. And heating up a pan for the tacos. So this pan heats up really quickly, so I'm going to turn the heat down a little bit. I'm going to use a dash of oil, so I'm not going to use a ton, probably about half a tablespoon, maybe a little less, probably a little less. You just want a little bit. So from here, I'm going to chop up some chicken. So I'm going to use the 2 chicken breasts that I did not season, or I only seasoned with salt and pepper. The lemon pepper one is going to be for the main meal. And then we're going to want to dice it up. If you want shredded chicken in your tacos, you can shred one of these. That works totally fine. I'm just going to dice all of it for ease for tonight, but you can do whatever works for you. And so if you chop this way, it'll be a little easier than chopping the way I tried to chop first. And so you can make slices that way, and then flip it around and dice it the other way. This is great. You can cook a bunch of chicken breasts. You can cook more than this recipe calls for and store it in the freezer. You can store it diced in the freezer. You can store it in amounts that you would use in one meal. So that works too. And the way these recipes are designed is you would make the chicken sheet pan meal one night, and then you'd make the stir fry one night, you'd make the tacos the other night. So like I said last week, this is going to be a lot more hectic than it would be if you were actually putting this into practice the way it was designed. Right now you may be like, this is the worst meal prep I've ever seen. But I promise it's a little less hectic if you do it as it's designed. So from here, we're going to keep chopping the chicken. This is looking a little undercooked, even though I temped it. So just, if you trust your meat thermometer, know that it was at the right temperature. If you don't trust your meat thermometer, we're throwing all of this chicken into hot pans, so it is going to cook a little more anyway. Okay, so from here, my veggies look nice and cooked. So I'm gonna add my 2 cups of brown rice and about half of this chicken. And then a tablespoon of soy sauce. This is low sodium soy sauce. If you have a gluten intolerance or have celiac disease, you can use tamari. That's basically a gluten-free version. I'm gonna try and yell because my stove is loud now, but you're gonna wanna mix that all together. If you want a little extra layer of flavor, you could add a splash of fish sauce to your stir fry. That'll add a really nice savory richness to it. Again, we haven't added any salt or pepper to this. Salt and pepper was on the chicken. Soy sauce has a lot of sodium in it already and adds a lot of salty flavors, so you don't want to add more. Okay, so then once it's all mixed, I'm just going to turn the heat down a little bit and let it cook for a little longer. This is a really good base recipe that you can add extra flavorings, extra seasonings to based on your needs. This is just a really good, great, easy weeknight meal. If you want to doctor it up with some extra spices, extra seasonings, extra sauces, you can totally do that. This is just a really great basic recipe for weeknights. Okay, so from there, we're going to cook up our chicken. I'm going to turn the heat down a little bit because it's already cooked and hot, so we don't need it to get more cooked. I'm going to throw the chicken in, and I'm going to mix in some taco seasoning. So you can mix your own spices if you want to mix your own spices. I'm using good old McCormick taco seasoning. But if you have your own favorite taco seasoning, use that. If you have your own favorite mix of spices at home that you like to use, you can, again, mix up these recipes as needed. So I'm using a hot one because I wanted one of these things to be a little spicier because I do like spicy food, but you can use a mild one. So you need about half a tablespoon, and just pour that over the chicken, and then mix it all up. And if it's looking really dry, you can add a little bit of water to mix it all up and have it not be quite so dry spice, if that makes sense. Which I'm going to add a little bit of water because that's what it's looking like for me. The water will just help disperse everything a little bit better. So okay, so I'm going to give this another stir. Okay, so then your stir fry is ready to go. Your chicken and potatoes are ready to go. So this is ready to plate up into a lovely meal of potatoes, mixed veggies, and some chicken. And then let's assemble a taco whilst we're waiting for the eggs to finish cooking. So we got our avocado crema. I got some corn tortillas, some cabbage. Excuse like the explosion of everything in my kitchen right now. Okay, so I'd recommend heating up the tortillas first. You can wrap a pile in foil and put them in the oven at a pretty low temperature, like 250, and warm them up that way. You can throw them in the microwave, you can throw them into a pan, whatever works. I'm using corn tortillas today. You can use whole wheat tortillas. Corn tortillas are also a great whole grain option. So I'm gonna turn my chicken burner off. I'm gonna put some avocado crema on the bottom. You can also do this on the top. Totally up to you and your preference. And then I'm gonna add a little bit of chicken. I'm gonna add some, this is like a slaw mix without the dressing, so it's just some shredded cabbage and carrots. So I'm gonna add that on the top. I'm gonna add some sliced up radishes that I sliced up earlier. And then, because we have lots of cilantro left, I'm gonna tear up some cilantro on the top. If you want to add some cheese, some salsa, some sour cream, whatever you would usually add to tacos. But we got a really awesome taco here. I would probably add a little bit of salsa or hot sauce to this to give it that extra kick. But I used hot taco seasoning, so maybe not. I'll probably taste test it first. But then we have the taco ready to go. Everything else is ready to be plated, and we're just waiting on the eggs. So let's check on those and see what they look like. Okay, so this is what my eggs look like right now. You want to make sure they're set and they're not runny. So I'm going to temp mine real quick and see where they're at. You also want to cook these to about 165, maybe a little lower. Okay, awesome. They were climbing very quickly. They were at 163 when I took that out. So I'd say these are ready to go too. With these, you want to make sure they cool a little bit before you try and get them out of the pan. If you try and get them out when they're really hot, they can break up and crumble, and you just want to let them firm a little bit and cool down. Also, the pan's hot and you may accidentally burn yourself. And so then with this sheet pan meal as well, I want to go through some of the other options that are in that handout that you have, and then spend the last few minutes answering questions if you have any, because I was hoping to leave a little extra time at the end, so I'm glad I was able to do that. So with that base sheet pan meal, if you don't like tacos, you don't like stir fry, you can also use that. The other half of the handout that you got was how to transform it into a salad, a pasta, and a soup. And so for a salad, you could use this base meal, eat the base meal, and then add the chicken and the potatoes to a salad and whatever salad base you like, your favorite greens, if you like tomatoes in your salad, your favorite dressing, whatever you want to do with that. Really great, awesome way to do that. To make it into a pasta dish, I would cook some extra veggies with it and do like a roasted vegetable chicken pasta. So from there, cook the whole grain pasta, whatever the box says, and then dice up the chicken, chop up the veggies, mix that all in with the pasta, reheat the veggies and the chicken on its own with some olive oil, maybe throw in some Italian seasoning or some dried basil or some fresh basil, whatever you've got in the house. Mix that all in with the pasta, and you can either do a little sprinkling of Parmesan cheese, you can add pasta sauce if you want pasta sauce, you could add pesto, you could leave it as is. That would be really awesome. And then for soup, you can make a bunch of the chicken and the veggies, and if you made the stir fry, you could make extra rice when you make the rice and throw that in with some chicken broth and make a really awesome soup. That'd be a really great one for the winter, because you could make a really big batch of it and put it in the freezer ready to go. Okay. Is there a dairy-free substitute? Yeah, so you could use any non-dairy yogurt alternative. You could use a non-dairy sour cream, anything that has kind of that similar consistency. They have lots of different dairy-free yogurt options these days. So like a plain soy yogurt, plain coconut milk yogurt, plain cashew yogurt, almond yogurt. I'd say pick the one that has a similar taste profile to yogurt, so like something with a tang and a creaminess, because the Greek yogurt adds a really nice tang to this to go with the really creamy, rich avocado. But I'd say any would work. You could also skip it and just add extra lime juice. It will be a little thicker, and you won't get that tang, but it'll still be really tasty. Or you could I wouldn't add a full quarter cup like we did Greek yogurt, but you could do like a plain non-sweetened almond milk or coconut milk or soy milk or oat milk, whatever you've got in the fridge, like plain unsweetened, and just add a little splash to have that thinning action without adding a lot of bulk. So I'd say those would be some really great options. Like canned coconut milk would work as well. So you could do a little bit of that in there. But I'd say you can just easily sub for a non-dairy yogurt of your choice, like a plain unsweetened one. I just make sure that it's plain and unsweetened. Yeah, that's a great question. Okay, so I think we got all of the meals, and if you made all of this with me, you're like me, and now you have meals for days, which is really awesome. If you just made some of it, I really hope it all turned out. Please throw in questions. We have about 10 more minutes. So if you want to try some things, and once you've tried it, ask questions. If you're like, ooh, that's a little funky, or what can I add to change it? Please throw those in the chat box. Yeah, same base ingredients and different meals. I love that. When I work individually with clients who want to work on meal planning, I'm all about it. I personally, there are people who can. I personally cannot sit there and eat the same thing lunch and dinner all week long. I need variety in my life. And so this is a really awesome way to have that variety. Another way is, like, if you're a salad person, get a bunch of salad dressings. You can use the same base salad all week long if that's your go-to lunch, and just throw in different dressings. That sometimes is enough variety for people. Or make sure you have a bunch of different sauces in your fridge that you can add to meals to make them feel different. But yeah, people can do it. I cannot. I'm not that person, but I need the variety. So I really do love this. Okay, let's see. Oh, thank you. I'm glad everyone's smelling good. Best ways to save avocado. Great question. Okay, so let me grab a couple things. Okay, so hold on, let me grab one more. Okay, so I'm on like a reduced plastic kick, and I mean, I have been for a while. So you can use cling wrap if you would like. That gets really close to the avocado skin, so it helps keep it fresh for a really long time. So if you have cling wrap in your house, use cling wrap. I also have these Beeswax food wraps. This one needs washing. I apologize. It's been like on the top of some like dough I was making, so it's got some like dough crumbs in there. So ignore that. But you can use these beeswax wraps like you can cling wrap, and just get it on really tight. I'm not going to do it because this one is dirty and needs washing. I don't have any clean ones right now. You can use Ziplocs and just get the air really tight. I don't have any Ziplocs in my house right now. I just have these reusable silicone ones. So you can throw it in there and wrap it really tightly. You can also do, if you have like paper towels, you can damp the paper towel a little bit, wrap the avocado in it, and then put it in a Tupperware container. That can help save it. People say lemon or lime juice can really help it. I don't really notice a difference when I've tried that. I think just getting it in as airtight container as possible and leaving the big seed in. Those are my two. Get it as airtight as possible and leave the seed in. Okay. Will you resend the printouts? Yes, I will make my errors and I will fix those, and I will resend them to Dakota so she can get them out to everyone. I apologize for that. Oh, Dakota already answered that. Never mind. I feel like reheating chicken in the microwave causes the taste to be a little off. Is there any suggestion for avoiding this other than using the stove or oven? Unfortunately not. If it feels like it tastes a little funky in the microwave, I would recommend oven or stovetop. Alternatively, if the chicken's like mixed in with things, if you're not just microwaving like a plain chicken breast, that can sometimes help make it taste a little more normal. Like if you already have this stir fry made and you're just reheating this, that can do a little better in the microwave than just like a plain chicken breast. But unfortunately, there's no way around it other than just either accepting it or heating it up on the stovetop or in the oven. With the quiche, you have to adjust the recipe based on the water content of the veggies. I don't usually. That's why cooking the vegetables ahead of time can help, because it'll get rid of that water content. Here, I'll pull, you guys are probably all horrified and I like reusing of utensils here. I will pull, let's pull this little mini one out. Okay. Mine are really soft. I don't know if mine are fully cooked. Okay, so yes, probably. It's been a while since I made egg muffins. I used to make them all the time when I was meal prepping in grad school when I was super busy. Water content, yes, I will take this as a learning experience. Definitely get some of that water content out first. That'll be what will be the best. It's not going to harm the taste. They're just going to be a little harder to get out. I don't know if you can see me trying to get one of these out. I also apparently didn't grease the pan enough as I was showing off my nice pans. Cooling it will also help this. So these are still really hot, but if you can see that there is some water in there. So I'd say if you're okay with that, once they cool, they'll come out and they'll just leave a little water in the pan. If you're not okay with that, cook the veggies ahead of time. It'll get rid of that problem. So learning experience. It's been a while since I made them. Okay, yeah. Any other questions of the last few minutes? Anyone tasting food already? Is it tasting good? Any questions on that? We'll sign off and I'll let you eat your yummy creations.
I don't see anything else coming in. So I'll just take a quick moment to thank you so much. You put so much hard work into this. And I know that I'm not the only one that appreciates it so much. And I know I'm not the only one whose stomach is grumbling now. So we appreciate you and all of your hard work so much. If anyone else has any questions, or if they come up later, if you were just watching tonight and you're going to try later and questions come up, don't hesitate to reach out to me or to Charlotte. Her email address was in that email from me, so you have the ability to contact either of us with anything. The handouts, the recipes, and the recordings, all of that information is going to be sent out to all of you. Again, you should receive it within the week. And if you don't, again, don't hesitate to reach out. But thank you, Charlotte, and thank you everyone else who is attending. And we are going to be doing a holiday version of this come November, so keep your eye out for that. We'd love to have you back.
Yeah, thank you everyone for coming. Hopefully you are starting to taste some yummy food. If not, shoot me an email. If you need some troubleshooting that this setting isn't designed to do, please feel free to email me. I'm pretty quick to respond to emails.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Have a wonderful weekend, everyone.